Hey, how's it going? My name is Michael, and today I'm going to walk you through how I made the remix for Holding On to Nothing by Kikimora. So my first impressions on this song when I had heard it is it's so catchy. It felt like it had such a vibe going already from the initial track that they had recorded, really. I felt like there was a lot of opportunity to really make this into a chill vibe kind of thing, and really something that makes you kind of groove. The song already had that going for itself, so I was like, why not? So I would say for sure, I kind of had this idea that I should make this something bigger, maybe make it a little more dramatic or something. So it was basically just really inspired by when I heard the song originally. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in the DAW so I can show you what I did to the remix. All right, now that we're in the DAW, we're gonna go ahead and take a look at a couple of things from the intro. First thing I wanna check out is the effects section. This area I feel like is super important for setting the groundwork for kind of the ambience that is going to tell a story, basically, right? I treat my effects section kind of almost like a movie area kind of thing, because I like to think of, you know, subconsciously what you might be hearing is kind of going to set the tone, and it's not always like tonal stuff or melodic stuff, but sometimes it's literally just sound effects to kind of put you in the headspace of, you know, where the song might be going, right? So in this case, there's a lot of things kind of happening. There's a lot of textures, grainy stuff, and let's take a listen to it now. So as you'll hear, there's kind of a lot going on there. There's a couple of sounds I really want to talk about, which is the obvious, you know, little grainy ASMR kind of things. Those are super cool and they pop out of the mix so well. I think they set the stage for kind of the intimacy and kind of the vibe of what we're going to be getting into for the rest of the remix, right? Another cool thing that I did some recordings a couple of years ago for some like whoosh sounds and like impact sounds using my mouth. So instead of like the classic like splash sound or like cymbals that are reversed, I wanted something a little more airy and also kind of that felt a little more personal, something unique, and then also, you know, sounded like a voice basically. So what I did is I literally just took a mic and just went put a lot of reverb behind it and some EQ stuff, and I think it really worked for this song, considering that we were kind of going that like intimate, kind of close kind of feeling. It's really subtle, but kind of having that as opposed to like white noise like impacts, I think really made that difference of setting the stage correctly. All right, next up, let's talk about drums. The original percussion loop that Eric had done for the original song, I thought was amazing. It's got such groove and it's got like that light touch kind of soft feeling to it that I think just worked super well for the intro. The only things that I changed were essentially just the panning. I used a plugin in Ableton called Auto Pan, and that kind of just moves it from left to right, and I think I only had it for the intro and maybe a section or two after that. For the most part, everything's the same. You know, I think it really delivered the performance I needed. So let's take a listen to that right now. So you'll hear that it's super subtle. It just moves left and right kind of throughout the song of this intro here. And yeah, I really didn't have to do a lot with that. That's pretty much the only percussion we have going on other than like the effects section. Let's check out vocals next. So for me, I think it's super important to give the listener kind of a heads up of what to expect in the song. You know, sometimes introduce the hook. It gives the song an identity. I think it really just creates the vibe off the bat and sets the tone pretty much for everything, right? The original song had a great hook that I thought was, you know, perfect for making into like an EDM-esque kind of thing. So I was like, all right, cool. Why don't we just really embellish that and really bring it out, and let's kind of make that the main theme of the whole song. So in this intro, yeah, obviously we have the holding on, and then you'll have some delays that kind of hold out between each one of those phrases. In between that is this like fluttering kind of effect on some other vocals that I was given from the stems of the original song. So let's take a listen. So yeah, so you'll hear that kind of like fluttering effect on the background melody. That was just done as well from Autopan. Autopan's a pretty cool plugin, and you can kind of do, I guess I wouldn't say a lot, but you can do some cool effects on it. So let's pull it up here. You'll notice, pretty simple plugin inside of Ableton. You can do the shape, but for like a tremolo type effect, you would turn the phase down, and it kind of has this like fluttering effect that is super useful for stuff like this, where you kind of don't want a standard just vocal kind of running all the time. You want to set up a vibe, make something a little bit unique. So yeah, so I gave it a try and I thought it fit really well. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is kind of how I thought about doing the choruses or the drops. And they're kind of a blend of both, really. I wouldn't say there's much of a drop, like a main bass kind of thing going on. But the idea was to kind of treat this as an open section to kind of have a loop, if you will, something to kind of hook the listener into kind of repeating. This is basically where I really brought out the holding on kind of thing into the forefront of the mix. As well as we brought in a vocal chop to kind of supplement the parts in between. So we kind of created this new melody behind it with some vocals that I chopped up early in the session. So we can check out the vocal stuff here. Cool. So there's basically like three things happening there. The vocal chop is really, really under the mix on this version of the drop or chorus. The main thing is obviously the hook, and then in between that is the intro kind of hums that were there. The idea for me, whenever I make drops and choruses, is I want to build off of that. Each one kind of has to feel like it's increasing in energy and intensity. And this one, I would say, is kind of like a rolled back version of the one that comes later on. I felt like the intensity here was great. It's kind of just introducing the main ideas and kind of the vibe still. And even in like the instruments, we'll feel that not as intense as it is later. So let's take a listen. So there you hear some super simple elements. You know, there's like some super saws that kind of take up that high buzz sound, right? You have a low bass layer that's kind of prevalent throughout the whole mix, really. And then the main chord progression is like some bell stuff that I kind of kept in and out depending on what section we're on. For the most part, it's pretty simple. It's a more broken down version than other parts later in the song, but still gets the point across, I think, pretty well. You also notice that the side chaining here is pretty intense, and for the chorus in general to kind of really make you feel like that dancey kind of thing, I think it's important to really bring out the side chaining, particularly in these parts of the song. If we look at this verse right over here, you'll see there's not as much side chaining happening as there is over here. And that's kind of to let you know, oh, okay, this is the dancey part, you know. Subconsciously and kind of, you know, inherently, I guess, us as listeners, we hear the kick kind of be the main thing, consistent and kind of there, keeping us grooving and stuff. And just to kind of help with that is the side chaining, basically. Next section I want to talk about is this bridge/break area. It's kind of leading us back into a build-up into the final chorus. And here, I really wanted to break down all of the instruments and kind of make it feel like, you know, you're floating kind of in space, I guess. It's a very ethereal kind of feeling. There's a lot of those textures that are kind of back, and there's more elements that are kind of spinning around the head almost using autopan technique, right? So we can listen to that really quick. So that part, you'll hear some like guitars in the background. Again, something from the original song that I had taken and kind of tried to mess with a little bit. I think I adjusted the pitches of some of them and kind of made them more of a staccato thing and let the delays kind of handle the rest of the, I guess, the release, if you will. Doesn't sound very staccato because of the delays, but I think overall it just really added that ambient vibe that I was going for in this section. And I think this section in general, I think, is just such a great contrast between, the verse that comes before it and then the build up that comes after it. It's really intimate. Again, it kind of is like, call back to the intro with like those textures and kind of just letting the listener kind of get a break from that like kick intensity and kind of the groove. And yeah, I thought that was a really important kind of thing to focus on this section. So the last thing I want to talk about here is the final chorus where, we had the build up kind of leading up to it. And the idea, of course, is to kind of make it feel like everything's let loose, we kind of built up a lot of intensity. We just want to make it feel a little more full. We want to make it feel more dancey and kind of just bouncier, if anything, right? So there's a couple of things that I did to kind of help bring that out and also make it contrast from other choruses. So there's more syncopation. I think I brought in the intro percussion loop that Eric did. So we can take a listen to what that sounds like isolated here. There's a lot of like sounds kind of blended in there. I think I had like about 5 layers of drums there, and they all kind of help move the song. And you'll notice the upbeats are really light in contrast to the obvious downbeats. And there's some stuff that kind of offset every other beat. So like on the snare hits, usually it's like claps and stuff, but you'll hear like a tonal difference between them to kind of give like this contrast that the song is moving and it's not so repetitive. That's something I like to do in a lot of my songs personally. I think it gives the groove a little bit more depth, really. So outside of drums, we got to talk about vocals for sure, because the vocals kind of have the same thing going on, but I think the vocal chops on this part are a little more prominent. So there you'll hear the vocal in general. The main hook is it's got a couple of harmonies to it. It's got the main, there's an octave lower, and I think there's a 5th layer in there, kind of really subtly. I really wanted to make that vocal feel large. And I mean, the best way to do that is kind of add like harmonies and stacks, right? I did that, I think, with a plugin called Nectar 4. I love using that for vocal stuff and highly recommend checking it out if you've never used it before. There's also one thing I wanted to mention. The vocals compared to the original kind of sound deeper in tone. I did adjust kind of the sound of it using a plugin called Little Alter Boy, and it adjusts kind of the pitch but also the formant, as it calls it, of the voice so that it kind of sounds deeper, right? I think it was like something that kind of matched the vibe, of feeling a little warmer, a little deeper, and overall I think it just fit the EDM style a little bit more. I did have to adjust it to kind of make it feel still true to the original. The original mix down that I had, I think, was even deeper than the one that we have now. And for contrast, here's what the original vocals kind of sounded like.
Yeah, you're holding on to something, you're holding on.
And again, this is what we have now. So yeah, so deeper in tone. I also think I pitched it down by 2 semitones to kind of give it a unique feeling. That's another thing I really like doing with remixes in general, is either changing the BPM, the key, or kind of just doing both. I think it helps kind of reimagine the song a little bit easier while keeping it familiar. So last thing I want to talk about in the this breakdown here is the final chorus instruments, as well as like the guitar solo, and kind of how I went about trying to figure out what to do with that, right? So as we said, we were ramping up the energy, and one thing I think is great for doing that is not only percussive stuff, but also kind of adding a couple more stacks of synths. So here you're gonna notice there's more stuff going on. I think there's original melody runs from the keyboardist Leo that are kind of scattered throughout to kind of give that feeling of unleashed, letting go, kind of more improv-y, but still sticking to like the format, right? So let's take a listen. And so yeah, so you'll hear like some of the keyboard runs kind of in the background there, along with like more high frequency kind of synth sounds. I think that really brought up the energy and intensity without making it too complicated, really, because we still have like that bouncy, you know, kind of synth sound and progression kind of going without taking away from it, really. Cool. And then let's talk about the solo. So the guitar solo, I love. Being a guitar player myself, you know, I can't help but want to have more guitar stuff in the music that I make. I thought there was a great opportunity to kind of put a solo at the end. I did this like tape stop effect on the instruments to kind of make the song have a contrast between chorus B and chorus A. So it's like, you know, kind of cutting it in half almost, right? I had to rearrange it just a little bit because there was a lot of notes that were on the downbeats, and obviously since the kick is on the downbeat, you know, it's kind of being sidechained, so it's taking out those notes. The way that I arranged it originally kind of didn't work. I messed around with a couple of things, and this is basically what I ended up with. Cool. So I hope you enjoyed that track breakdown of the remix that I made for Kikimora's Holding On to Nothing. Just as a comparison, here's the before and here's the after.
And you're holding on to something. You're holding on.
So if you want to hear more, you can totally check out the links down below. If you enjoyed the video and this kind of track breakdown thing, feel free to comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. We're looking to do more stuff like this in the future, and let us know what kind of stuff you want to see in the future from the channel. Last but not least, I want to give a shout out to Star City Studios for giving me the opportunity and the resources to kind of do this whole video and the remix itself. Also, shout out to Miss Margarita over here behind the camera for doing everything like this. This wouldn't be possible, so thanks, Margarita. If you enjoy the content, like, comment, subscribe, let us know what's going on, let us know what you think, and stay tuned for more.